up for today's study session for the Cicerone exam. Just waiting for my good buddy Matthew Geary. Here he is. Bring him on. Hop over to
Hello.
Facebook. Hello.
How are
Look
ya?
at your view.
I got a fancy view today, so I figured I'd have to share it with the world.
Share it with the entire
It's
world.
better than looking at my face, so I could just do this. Better, but alas.
Very dark. You just like look at that.
Yeah. So, how's it?
It's going really well. How are you?
You hear me? Okay.
Just sharing this
I'm doing
out.
well.
Good.
Okay.
Where are you?
I'm in Denver on the 46th floor of some tall building. I'm doing a lunch and learn education session today on English ales. So this is where I'm going to be. So I figured I'd just get here a little bit early and meet with you and then teach people about English ales. So
Nice.
yeah.
Learning more about beer with Matthew Geary. Listen in. All right, we are
see me here.
Ready to go. I did my homework.
There we go. That's better. You did? Okay. Well, tell me, what did you learn about Pilsner beers?
Okay, so just for a recap for everybody, I'm Amanda from Great Beer Adventure. I do a lot of great beering and adventuring, and that's Matthew Geary. He has beer in his blood, no matter which way you look at it.
That's right.
That's right. And yeah, you're working out at Miller Coors and have decided to help me with my Ciceroning.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a professional beer educator, so I'm here to try to educate and spread knowledge throughout the world. So hopefully we can accomplish a little bit of that today. And so we left off last time. I gave you the homework assignment of trying a Czech Pilsner, a Czech or Bohemian Pilsner, and a German style Pilsner. Did you do any kind of background information? Did you just go straight for it and taste it?
I went straight for it, and I looked at the SRM, the IBU, and the ABVs.
Okay, yeah.
But
they're very similar, right?
Similar, but it's kind of actually a little interesting because the Czech Pilsner generally has a little bit more leeway, it seems. So, like, the SRM is from 3 to 7, where German Pilsner is like 3 to 4. And is that to do with the German purity laws and all of that, and how it has to be like very specific things?
No, it doesn't really have to do with that so much as in the way that the ingredients dictated how they could make the beers at the time. So the Czech style, Bohemian style Pilsner, if you go back, and this is something that you want to study a lot, is the origin story of Pilsner. So back in the 1800s, beer was being made in Pilsen, Czech Republic, and there were, I think, 250 different brewers in the town, all brewing subpar beer in the 1830s. And some of the younger, local, more animated brewers actually rolled out some barrels into the town square and took an axe and spilled them into the street, saying, "We demand better beer." The town government said, "Hey, the Bavarians are shipping in better beer, and our own people are not drinking our beer; they're drinking the Bavarian beer." And this was probably like a wheat beer or some sort of ale at the time. So what the Czechs did, what the people from Pilsen did, was they rounded up all their resources, put all the 250 brewers together, pretty much sent out one representative, learned about some of the best practices in the industry. At the time was that the Brits were advancing on some of their indirect malt roasting skills, and they had their local ingredients, which were super soft water. So soft water is water without very much mineral content in it. And they had their Moravian barley, and they had Saaz hops. And They actually smuggled some Bavarian lager yeast over. There's different stories about that, which are entertaining. But they made this super, it's basically the first golden lager. But what they could do, they could heavily hop the beer and still have a nice hop flavor without kind of a really kind of aggressive, sharp bitterness. The Germans or the Bavarians.
So that's actually.
Okay, go ahead.
That's actually something that I noticed was like with the German one, it seemed a little bit more sweet and very mild, but still on that sweet side of things. And also the cereal components were deliciously crazy in there. Whereas the Czech Pilsner was more, there was like right on the end, right on the very back, there was just a slight bitterness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're going to have a little more, it's going to be a higher IBU, but I think the apparent bitterness, meaning how bitter the beers taste in general, are that the German style will have a little more aggressiveness to it typically. It depends which depends which Pilsner you have from Germany. If you have typically more northern Germany that you go, the more bitter or bite you're going to have to it. And the further south, it's going to be a little more on the malty side. However, the Bohemian Pilsner will have kind of typically have a darker color and will have a little bit more body to it, a little more sweetness up front, a little more candy sweetness. Both will use what's called decoction mashing, and we can get into what different types of mashing are down the road once we talk about when we talk about production, ingredients, and things like that. But basically, it's a process of getting a little more extract out of your wort, out of your mash, and that can contribute some flavor to and color to the beer. So Pilsner Urquell in particular, that still does that, and you get some caramelization, which adds to the color and some of the flavor of the beer as well too. But the Germans have really hard water; they have a lot of carbonate in their water, and so when you try to heavily hop a beer like that, it brings out some of the more aggressive, bitter tones of the beer. So, it is interesting that the name of the beer Pilsner just means it's from the town of Pilsen. However, it was adopted as a style name throughout the world. So, Pilsner from Germany. So a lot of them call it a German Pils instead of Pilsner.
Yeah.
And that just means that it's not Pilsen. So.
Yeah, one of the
but what did you
things
think? So
I noticed.
Let me hear your descriptors.
Okay. Well, you told me I had to come up with like 3 examples of each, so I did, and I did notice that. You got some of those ones that were like the Prima Pils, and then the Lagunitas Pils, and the Mama's Yellow Pils or something like that up in
Mama's Little Yellow Pils,
Oscar Blues.
Oscar
Blues. So I noticed that the Pils thing is there. I liked them. I mean, I think they're really good summer drinking beers. I feel like it's funny because we actually have some breweries around here that are doing Pilsners. But here in Maine, it's like everybody's like, you know what? I don't want to just do that. I'm going to do something slightly different. So trying to think about a commercial example from right around here.
Bunker Machine Pils is a good one. It's a Czech style Pils, I believe.
It is. But I feel like they throw extra hops in there. Like it's even a little bit more bitter. Like they're like, no, I can do better. Here's some more hops.
Right. Yeah. So it's applying to the American palate, right? So it's got a little bit more aggressive hop flavor and aroma, probably. It might be around the same bitterness level, but that's typically the American interpretation of this style. So you look at the baseline. So this is what this study is for. Is like looking at like the two kind of historic styles, the German and the Czech, and kind of understanding where they come from and how they're made, and then looking at what American craft brewers are doing and how they interpret the style. It's a different mash bill. Maybe they put some rye in it to get a little spicy, or maybe they use some, New World or American hops that have a little more citrus character. But typically Czech-style hops, Czech hops, there as Saaz is one of the noble hops. There's 4 noble hops, and both continental Europe hops. But the Czech Saaz is going to be a little more spicy in character. It has maybe a little floral honeysuckle aroma to it when it's fresh. And then the Germans will use a noble hop with similar qualities, but a bright floral, and then an aggressive bitterness in those. So American versions, there's Von Trapp does a Bohemian Pils. I don't know if you can get Von Trapp in Maine. I think you can, right? Then there's also you can get Von Trapp. So they're a good one. Dirigo, well, they do some lagers. I don't know that they do a Pils, but they do a Hell. So for next week's homework, I have 3 styles for you. I have Kolsch.
Oh, goodness. Okay, 3.
Yeah, Kolsch, German Helles, and International Pale Lager. And I kind of want you to, what might be fun is get your husband or get your kids or whoever to pour you blind the 3 beers and see if you can pick out which is which. But then look at each one. Yeah. So Kolsch, Kolsch is an actual appellation, meaning like Champagne. The only real Champagne is from the Champagne region of France. So the only real Kolsch is from Cologne, Germany, and within sight of the church or something, as the story goes. But it's a hybrid. It's actually an ale that's kind of brewed like a lager, so it'll have a little bit of more yeast character, a little more fruitiness to it. So, and then see if you can find a traditional, like a Fru or a Reisdorf or a Gaffel. They might have those around. So see if you can find, before you go to a local craft, because there are, to know the style, you want to know the baseline before you kind of see what some of the local guys are doing. And there are breweries that brew to style, so if you know that, then that's a good option to do.
Okay.
For the German Helles, find Stefan, Original, Spaten, Polliner, Originals. Those all are Helles. But you could get, I think, I know Dirigo does a Helles. Their lager is a Helles, but I'm not sure how they interpret the style, if they've taken any liberties
I've
against
had
it
theirs
too.
a lot. So I should
probably
I should probably try one of the traditional
ones, it would be interesting.
I really enjoy Dirigo's, so I'd just be like, so I really like this one again.
Yeah. Well, it would be good to see how it compares to some of the classic styles. So, and then, for the international pale lager, those are going to be the big guys. That's like your Corona, Peroni, Heineken, those sorts of things. And see if you can get it in a can, maybe, so you don't get the skunking, because a lot of those international lagers are in clear or in green bottles, and you're going to get a lot of light strike in there. So if you can get it in a can, that's probably going to be better for you. But you can also do...
I got to tell you,
go ahead,
I need to start finding a place that'll sell me a single of these, because I don't need a 6-pack of Corona in cans. I mean, Cinco de Mayo is coming up, but...
I bet you could go to 7-Eleven and get one in the door or something like that, right? Or some I don't know how fresh it'll be, but some
I'll give it a try.
I think, I don't know, maybe Trader Joe's allows you to buy singles. Some of the I know, what's the place on Forest Avenue over by the Shop and Save there? The craft beer cellar? No, the craft beer cellar.
There's the beer cellar.
The beer cellar. Yeah, they're not going to have singles?
Coronas.
Not a Corona, but they might have Reisdorf Kolsch, or they might have some of the more obscured German imports. But
I'll look around and see what we can get.
Yeah, it's tough. So it's funny, in Colorado, there's grocery chains can't sell beer at every store, so you have to go to these liquor stores, and they have huge liquor stores here, like RSVP times 50 singles. So depending on where you are, you might have better opportunity to find singles. So
all right,
but good luck.
Well, we're already halfway through, and we've only gone through our homework, so we need to get on to today's lesson.
All right,
and
today's lesson, we're going to talk.
I believe that we somewhere near taxes, right?
Yeah, we finished taxes, right? I think we talked pretty much. We beat that to death last time.
I think so.
Yeah, I won't review because then we'll just spend all of our time reviewing.
Correct.
And we'll go into. Did we talk about?
Oh, we're going to talk about codes.
Code dating, yeah. So code dating. This is something that's really important for most styles of beer. Beer is like any other food item. The fresher the better. It's like if you have a hamburger, you're not going to set it aside to age for a week before eating it. You know, you want to eat it pretty much right away.
Oh, that sounds so gross.
Yeah. Right. So most beer is similar, although it's not going to hurt you if you have an old beer. But what
it might hurt you if you have an old beer.
Yeah, it might hurt your soul a little bit. But what's going to happen is the first things that are going to go are some of those bright hop flavors and aromas. Your beer is going to start to oxidize, so you'll get a little more papery, maybe raisins, depending on the style. Flavors like wet paper sorts of flavors come from oxidation. So you can when you look at your Kolsch and your Helles, if you get something from Europe, check to see when it was packaged and if you can taste any of those kind of wet cardboard, wet newspaper flavors in there. But they do pasteurize, which a pasteurization is a process that stabilizes the beer. It makes sure that there's no organisms living in there, and it actually extends the shelf life. In the short term, it may slightly age the beer, but in the long term, it gives it a longer shelf life. So let's see. So code dating. So a lot of people give a born on date, which means that's the date that the beer was packaged. And then some places give an expiration date, which means usually brewers will have a tasting panel, and they'll have studied their beers and see at what point in time do they feel like the flavor of that beer is diminished enough so that most consumers will notice the difference and it'll start making a difference in their sales. So that being said, every brewery is different. You could have one brewery that's got a 2-month code date. You could have one that's got a 9-month code date. So it's hard to say. In general, let's see where my notes are here. For non-pasteurized draft beer, codes usually 45 to 60 days, and that's it. That'll probably be on the exam, those dates. So those are key to remember. And pasteurized draft will be about 90 to 100 days for code to be. So anything within like 4 months of a pasteurized draft. Although I can tell you that imported beers will be probably 6 months on their code.
So you said the pasteurized was 90 to how many?
Pasteurized 90 to 120.
Okay, 120. Okay, and that's the 6-month mark again. Okay.
So bottled beer. Let's see bottled beer for storage, pasteurized or unpasteurized, just in general terms, 6 months cold and 3 months it's kind of stored otherwise. So that ties into this kind of 333 rule, the 333 rule. Basically, that's about how you store and keep beer. So imagine you can keep a beer and it'll be within, it'll still taste relatively fresh. If you keep it at 38 degrees for 300 days, it'll still be pretty decent. You'll still be able to drink it. Or it'll be the same as if you keep a beer for 30 days at 72 degrees. And that's the same as keeping a beer for 3 days at 90 degrees. So imagine if you keep, imagine the supply chain. So the brewery brews the beer and then packages it. Sits in their warehouse for a day, 2 days, 3 days. Then they send it to their distributor if they have one. And there, the distributor puts it on the floor. They got to bring it in a day. They're still moving out old product, or maybe they need that stuff. So it's going to be there for another 2-3 days. And then there it goes to the retailer, and the retailer, maybe it goes in their back store, maybe it goes onto their shelf, and then your retailer sells it to a customer, and then the customer throws it in their trunk, and they bring it to their house, they put it in the garage, and then they maybe get it in the fridge. So you can see that and then they finally drink it. So you can see there's a lot of opportunity for spoilage or heat influence. So if you say your retailer leaves it out on the back loading dock for 6 hours at 80 degrees, that stuff is going to cook, and it's going to really diminish the shelf life. So whatever you can do to keep the beer cold throughout that whole process, it doesn't matter how the temperature fluctuates. It's not going to impact it. It doesn't matter if it's warm or cold, and warm then cold, and warm then cold. Just any time that it's in those cold conditions, it's going to actually extend the life. So you want to make sure that the beer is kept cold as often as possible and as long as possible, and that will extend its flavor profile. So that will retain a lot of those flavors that go first, like a lot of the hop flavor and aroma that we talked about earlier.
A lot of people talk about like not wanting to take cold beer and let it get to room temperature, but that won't actually change it. It just makes the life shorter. That it's good, right?
Yeah,
is that what you're saying?
It's the myth.
Oh, you're starting to break up.
Can you hear me? Let's see.
You're stuck on a place where the pixels in your. I think it just got better. There you go.
Got better? Are we better
find
now?
the hot spot again?
I guess so. I don't know. So yeah, it's a myth that fluctuating temperatures, like people that go to the store and buy the warm beer off the floor because they think if they buy it cold, they're not going to be able to get it in the fridge right away. And if it's cold and then it warms up and then cold again, that's going to damage the beer. You're better off just buying it cold and getting it cold as often and as long as possible, and that's gonna actually be the best case scenario. So back to code dating. There are different types of code dating. Where's my notes on code dating? Let's see. Okay, there are, like we talked about. There's Born On. There's Best By. You can check with whatever brewery what the Best By actually means. And then there's this Julian coding. Basically, it's gives you a three-digit number, 1 to 365. Hey, Emily. And that's the day of the year. So day 364 is December 30th, if that makes any sense. And then it has the year. I know that Anchor Brewing in San Francisco, Anchor Steam, they do kind of a funky thing where they have the last number of the year first, and then the day of the month as a letter. So, 1 through 26 is A through Z, and then I think it's double A through, whatever the next 10 letters are. As the day of the month, and then the first letter of the month is the last digit. So it's very complicated. There's actually a website, beerdates.com, and if you ever want to nerd out in the store and I'm not sure, this doesn't look very fresh, it came all the way from California, you can look it up there, and they'll kind of walk you through how they code date their beers. So, if you're shopping for a barley wine or a Russian Imperial Stout or something like that, it doesn't really matter. It may be interesting to know how long it's been, and if it might age, those beers higher alcohol beers tend to age better, and actually change over time, and they may or may not taste better depending on how you like them or the specific beer. But if you're looking for a super juicy, hazy IPA bra, then you're probably going to want to have that as fresh as possible. So, look for the code dates on those. So those beers, it depends on the brewery and it depends on the beer, but typically the fresher the better for most beers, for the pilsners that you drank, for IPAs and those kind of more delicate flavors. You definitely want to have those guys fresh for sure. Okay.
So we got 5 minutes left.
5 minutes. Okay, let's jump real quick into serving alcohol, just because it's boring, and we can run it through it pretty quickly. It's very important.
Let's do it.
Very extremely important. So, learn about the effects of alcohol in the body, and learn what those symptoms look like. Basically the effect on body weight and body type. Basically, the more muscle mass and the more weight that you have in your body, the more able you are to absorb alcohol, and as a result, have a lower alcohol ABV, a lower impact on your body. So you can drink a little bit more than like a tiny person that weighs 10 pounds. Then that's going to be really impact you or that person a lot more. Learn about some of the alcohol elimination, like how does your body metabolize it? What's the rate at which it metabolizes? So a lot of it is done through the liver, but also your breath, your urine, sweat, feces, saliva, all those things impact on that. So just know kind of those basic details. And you eliminate about a half an ounce of alcohol per hour of straight alcohol. So consider that when you're just getting the details down for that. So body weight, tolerance, gender differences. Yeah.
If it's a half ounce of straight alcohol, what is per half hour? You said
that's about per hour. That's about one beer per hour. It's
what ABV though?
Like a 5%, like an average.
So like
average beer.
5% ABV beer has about 1 ounce of
half an ounce or so, give or take. It's rough, and it also depends on the person. So there's a lot of different variables that you have to adjust for that. But yeah, more or less that's kind of the rule of thumb for that. And then there's the different stages of drinking, and so as a server or somebody in the industry, it's important for us to recognize, there's specific terms. There's the subclinical level, there's the euphoria stage, the excitement stage, confusion stage, stupor, coma, and death. So just kind of know, you'll probably recognize these.
That escalates quickly.
Well, yeah, it can, but usually you'll be working from the subclinical level through the euphoria stage. You might see some people in the excitement stage, and then you probably, once you get to the excitement stage, you'll start recognizing that if that person is served anymore, they'll get into the stupor stage where they're just their motor skills they're falling over and they're slurring their speech. So learn about just basically the excitement stage that you're going to get. You know what it's like. That people will get loud and they'll start slurring a little bit. Their inhibitions have dropped a little bit. So when you're in beer service, it's important to recognize these steps, these stages, and make sure to take the responsible course of action, because bartenders and bars are responsible for their customers, and they can they're held responsible if somebody is out and it's unfortunate accident happens. So it's the other side of things, and we hope that most people that are interested in this sort of stuff are doing everything in moderation and looking at the fun and interesting sides of this stuff. But this is really important to talk about. So
absolutely. I think that people probably have a hard time distinguishing where I'm at, because I just live in the euphoria exciment stage all the time. They're like,
right,
she's had 2 beers already.
Right. Yeah. I woke up this way. Yeah.
Just seltzer.
Yeah, just seltzer. Kids me like this.
Okay. So
okay.
What else do we need to know?
One last part of the beer service is consider the beer that you're serving, and when choosing serving sizes, what's the appropriate size? So you're not going to serve a 12% imperial stout in an imperial pint. You know, you're going to choose an appropriate smaller service glass. Whereas if you're having a 3.5% English mild beer, you could serve that in a 20-ounce pint, and it's fine. So it's a pretty easy concept, but just you know.
Okay. So the higher the ABV,
that,
the smaller the glass. The smaller the
more or
ABV,
less, yeah, just
the larger the glass.
A little snifter, yeah. You can do a big pint of Coors Light, but yeah,
that's it.
yeah,
all right.
Right, yeah, just a little thimbleful of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So far we've talked about keeping and serving. And we've talked about the purchasing, the accepting, and we've actually started talking a little bit about the beer storage and the born-on dates.
Beer storage. Yeah. So we'll get into next time. We'll get a little bit into rotating inventory, storing beer properly, basically. Keep it cold, not a light. And different things to look for. Some off flavors that develop with age on beer. Skunking is a big thing. Do an exercise where you have a beer in a can and pour part of it into a coffee mug, the opaque coffee mug, and then part into like a little clear glass and put it directly in the light and watch what happens. It's pretty interesting. Put it in direct sunlight. You can get that skunking aroma pretty quick. But yeah, we'll go through some of the stuff.
I'm going to try that out.
Yeah, it's a fun exercise to do. And people are very sensitive to it. And we can talk about exactly.
I'm going to have a few cans of Corona in my house this weekend.
Hey, yeah, you can experiment. Do some experimentation. Put one. You know what you could do? You could put one in like your. I don't know how warm it is in Maine yet, but if it's hot, I'll put one in your trunk for a couple of days, or put it in the oven. Put it in the oven for at 120 degrees for a few days, and then taste it and see what the difference is. So you can really you can mess with it a little bit and try it out. But yeah, we'll talk about that next week. And then remember, Kolsch. Helles and International Lager for next week.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you so much.
All right.
We, this is really super hard homework. Drinking beer. Dreads.
I'm giving you permission to drink beer, right? And turn it bad too. So that's the drawback.
Yeah. But I'm gonna be like, no, honey, I really need to buy a 6-pack of Corona. I have all of these science experiments I have to do.
You do. It's important. All right, Amanda, that was fun.
Much.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll
talk to you next week.
week.
All right, bye.
All right, bye.